We are live. Welcome to Aini Living Conversations. I am Julian Katari. I'm speaking with Blue Heron Woman. We get together here every week to give you a reading, a conversation, an introduction to a very interesting subject, many different subjects that we cover here on the show. This is the 196th session. We're coming up to 200 weeks and 200 hours of these conversations. And this week we're talking about the first immutable spiritual principle, which many of you might know is mentalism, the first hermetic principle, mentalism. But we're going to see, I suspect, that Blue Heron Woman is going to teach us about something she's been calling the pendulums. The pendulums are some type of, well, I call them inorganic beings that they draw on our polarities. They feed from our negativity. They feed from this dualism that gets created, this entity of thought that creeps into our minds and feeds on our negative. And you know how there's is two-sided. This is what I'm guessing about this pendulums. You're going to teach us about that right now. There's two sides to everything. One big example, the Democrats and the Republicans, right?
Yes. Those are two huge, yes. Huge pendulums. Huge pendulums.
Right. And the point is, they're both the same thing, both the same coin. It's an entity where none of the two sides is really good. It's really working for you. It's really...
No, they're both destructive pendulums.
Right. So that's what we're talking about today. And that's what is so exciting about today's session. So let's get started with this. The mind, the first immutable spiritual principle, mentalism.
Well, many, many moons ago, we talked about how science has proved that there is a God, and they call it, they use the word principle, which means it must create, constitute, create, sustain, govern, right? So there's actually 8 gods.
Okay. And we had that
there's not just one
conversation, I think.
But there's 8. So we're going to go into this deeper, and I'm not going to stick strictly to Hermeticism. I just found the spiritual, the principles, the God principles of the Dogon tribe of Africa. I'm going to be investigating them, bringing them in, because Hermeticism is mostly West. The Emerald's thought is mostly Western, not nothing else. I mean, it's valid, but and this is what we have to understand: is God is not a white male being somewhere up in the sky living in a place we call heaven that's standing up there judging us like Santa Claus.
Yeah.
These sacred principles are what God is. So this principle number 1, or natural law, but we're going to stick with principle, is all is mind or consciousness or awareness. That's what the Hermetic principles calls it, mentalism, but all is mind, consciousness, or awareness. And we could expand it and say love consciousness, or life, equality, abundant love, unity consciousness, Lealu mind.
Okay. Oh, you got a word for first letters for that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Acronym, that's what.
Yeah, an acronym. Did you know you were born in a mind that has been evolving for a very long time? Not a brain, a mind. Right? So, and that's what we have to understand. That's what God is. God is mind. It's not a white male being in the sky somewhere. It's mind. Where are these minds located? We're going to get into this. Probably not tonight, but so our intelligence, our mental activity is what is creating our world or reality, not our planet Earth that's been created, that we live in. A world is different from, we live in Pachamama, but we create our own little worlds around us with our thoughts, with our mind. So it sounds weird, but this is the ultimate in modern quantum physics. And it was discovered in 1927. Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, recognized that consciousness or mind, lealu mind, is creating our life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
What is consciousness? Well, the dictionary definition is the quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. The state or fact of being conscious of an external object, state, or fact. And then we could say consciousness is more than perceiving and knowing. It is knowing that you know. So we're still kind of murky there on what consciousness is, but it's consciousness and awareness are the same thing. So neurophysiologist, Mexican Jewish neurophysiologist Jacobo Grinberg and quantum physicist Amit Goswami discovered that consciousness, not matter, is the ground of being, and matter consists of possibilities of the consciousness itself. So matter remains part of God, and God can interact with matter without exchanging signals. Jacobo Grinberg was the first, so this is why I'm saying there's 8 gods. There's not just one, there's 8, because these principles, each one of these principles participates in creating, containing, sustaining everything. Jacobo was the first to do an experiment that has now been repeated many times. And the experiment was experimental evidence for the existence of God. And as a result, God gets a new name, quantum consciousness.
Okay.
So consciousness or mind creates our reality or world. How you are thinking, what you are believing, and and how you behave is manifest in the experiences we have. So our whole existence, everything we've become, everything we are, and everything we will ever be comes down to one thing: the conversation we have with ourselves inside, wherever inside we go, whether it's up here or down here. It all boils down to that. The voice inside our head that tells us what we can and can't do, or in our heart, wherever we think it's sitting at. Most of us were up here. So it tells us what's possible and what's impossible. So every single thought we think, consciousness, mind, thought. We could also add thought to that. All is thought. All is thinking. Every single thought we think creates a biochemical reaction in our body. Every single word we say to ourselves fires and wires specific neuron networks in our brain and other parts of our body. If you wake up every morning and say to yourself, I'm not good enough or can't do this, you're not just having a thought, you're programming your neural circuitry to create that exact reality, that world. And then not only are you creating that around you, you're putting that out there. Thoughts are energy. They don't go away. Energy doesn't dissipate. It goes out there so that another thought, just like it, can attach onto it, and then it becomes a quantum particle being or pendulum, and we're going to get into that more.
Okay. That's very exciting.
So, yeah, it is. The thing is, our brains can't tell the difference between what is happening in our environment and what we're thinking about. So when we change our thoughts, we literally change our brain structure. And this isn't just philosophy, it is neuroscience. And most of us live our lives on autopilot, letting our past program our future. We wake up with the same thoughts, which trigger the same emotions, which drive the same behaviors, creating the same experiences. So that is why most of us end up living the same day for 365 days for 70 years, instead of living different days every day for a year and then living 70 years. So change how we speak to ourselves, and we change our brain, our energy, and our life. Our brains process 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day, and 90% of those are exactly the same as yesterday. So we're thinking ourselves into the same life. 8% is from the atmosphere around us, especially in cities. Not so much in the country, but especially in cities, it's clogged with thoughts. And then 2% only 2% come from our deliberate thinking, because we're operating on autopilot. So how can we receive thoughts from the atmosphere around us? Well, because thought or consciousness is energy, and energy never dies. It just simply changes forms. So if we don't have control of our mind or consciousness, we have no clue whose thoughts or consciousness is shaping our brain. Most of it, it's the TV that's shaping our brain, the news, gossip, workplace gossip. So when you tell yourself things like, I'm not ready, I'm broke, I can't afford it, I'm not smart enough, our bodies believe every one of those words, and our brain releases stress chemicals, and our genes, DNA then express differently, our immune system changes, and our energy levels drop. So every time we have a thought, this is why it should all is thought. Every time we have a thought, our body makes a chemical. An emotion, a molecule of emotion. So our thoughts or consciousness create our biological state. So this is where I say a line that there's two lines, and we'll talk about one later. This one is your biography becomes your biology. Your story gets manifested in your body. We can create neural pathways. That's called plasticity. New neural pathways. That's called plasticity. So we can literally think ourselves into a new state of being. And our external reality then is a reflection of our internal dialogue. And this is called the mirror principle. But we'll talk about the mirror principle another time. That's God also. God is a mirror, showing us what our internal state is. Science says that the neurons that fire together get wired together. So that's another thing. You'll hear me say a lot. Your biography becomes your biology. The neurons that fire together get wired together. So every time you think a thought, you are either strengthening more of the same or you're creating something new. So every positive thought, every empowering statement that we make to ourselves isn't just words. It is electrical signals firing in our brain, creating new neural pathways. And guess what those electrical signals need to fire?
What?
Salt.
Okay.
Not white table salt. Not that's been. It needs the ancient
Not
seabed salt, the
fluoridated.
Redmond salt from Utah, the Himalayan pink salt, the ocean salt.
Yeah.
And this is the quote powers that be have known this for a very long time. That's why they have demonized salt, so that we would stop taking salt, so that we couldn't have neuroplasticity, because salt holds also consciousness. Salt, just as water does. So salt is God, water is God. Divine beings, divine entities. So our brain does not actually store information. It stores something like an IP address to where the data is held in the whole consciousness out there, or God, the whole field. So all living beings create the layer of their own personal world with their actions on one hand and their thoughts on the other. And then all these individual layers or worlds arrange themselves around each other and contribute to the creation of the wider world or reality. So the energy of our thoughts, which are born from the unity of our heart and mind, then transform possibility into reality. If we're conscious, if we're aware, if we're in control of where our mind is and what it's thinking. The part of consciousness or mind that corresponds to the quality of our thought waves can be materialized if the feelings of our heart are one with the thoughts of our mind. And again, mind is not in the brain. There's one piece of it that's in the brain. There's another piece that's in the heart. There's another piece that's in the solar plexus, another piece that's in the gut, and another piece that's in our haras, our lower dantian. So this is the point where a problem-free life can actually be the norm, right? If the feelings of our heart are one with the thoughts of our mind, we can live a problem-free life. Everything in life goes smoothly when we go with the flow and don't upset the balance. Mother Nature, Mother Earth, does not like wasting energy and has no desire to create intrigue. So unfortunate circumstances and events occur as the result of excess potential, which introduces an element of distortion into the energetic environment of consciousness or mind. Excess potential arises when some quality or another is attributed excessive, inflated importance. Dependent relationships, for one, exacerbate the excess potential. And dependent relationships are created when people begin to compare themselves, to compartmentalize and set conditions like, I'll be happy if you do this, and I'll do that to make you happy. Right? Knowing that they need to rely on someone external to them to make them happy, that creates excess potential. It's not necessarily a problem as long as the distorted evaluation exists only in relation to itself. But as soon as this artificially elevated, as soon as we make a huge problem of it, of one object is placed in comparative relation to another, now a charge crops up or meaning. We assign it meaning, or we're triggered, same thing, which creates a wind of balancing forces. And balancing forces try to neutralize the charge, the trigger, the meaning. And the impact of the balancing is focused on the person that created the trigger or the meaning. So here are some examples of charges built on dependent relationships. I love you provided that you love me. Conditional love, right? I love myself because I am better than the rest of you around me. You are bad because I am better than you. I'm good because you're bad. That's all religion. That's all religion right there. I do not like myself because I'm worse than anyone else, and you repulse me because you're not like me. That's out there right now. All that. So value judgments based on comparison create a charge or a trigger. Balancing forces try to neutralize the heterogeneity by the collision of the opposites. And then this is why trouble creeps into our lives so intrusively. Charge, meaning, or triggers distort the energetic environment and generates vortices, tornadoes of balancing forces. We generally don't seem to understand that the problems we experience in our lives have arisen because of something that is upsetting the balance. So then we try to fight the outside world rather than just letting the charge release by refusing to assign it meaning and say it's all about me. It's oh my God. And I've been living this for the last 3 weeks. I've been learning how to not assign things, and I'm living my 57th solar cycle, and I'm just now learning how to live this. Don't assign it meaning. It means nothing. In the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. So don't assign it any meaning. All it takes to really live a conscious, mindful, problem-free life is to give yourself permission to be yourself and allow or be okay inside yourself enough that you can handle others being different from you. It's letting go, controlling what you can, which is your attitude, and just letting the rest pass by. And that's a lot harder than it sounds because we're so programmed to assign things meaning, to make it all about us. This is where we get to the Toltec agreement of don't take anything personal, because it's not. Everything is impersonal. These gods, these immutable principles are not personal, but this is another thing I just got. We've been raised to believe in a very personal God who lives out there, who's going to freaking judge us for everything we do wrong, who keeps a Santa Claus list of everything we've done wrong, and runs around the globe with his bag of sticks and coal. I just came to that realization this week that I still have this belief inside me that there's this personal God. No, these principles are absolutely, totally impersonal. Absolutely and totally impersonal. Everyone gets treated the same. Every single one. Every single body, every single tree, every single pig, every single cow, everything gets treated the same. Impersonal. So when we don't have mastery of our mind or consciousness or thoughts, we get driven by something in the external world, and these are the pendulums or thought energy beings. These are energy informational entities that are created by our thought energy. So when you wake up every morning and go, oh my God, today's going to be, oh my God, you're putting that out there, and it's creating a quantum particle being or energy thought being or a pendulum above you that follows you around and then tries to gather more energy to feed itself. And then because you're in that state, especially when you walk down a city street, you're going to attract everyone else's pendulums, and it's going to create a huge ass pendulum.
Yeah. So it's very magnetic, huh?
Yeah. So to illustrate how a pendulum works, let's say you're walking along a sidewalk in the city. You have been behind someone you want to pass by, and just as you intend to step to the side to walk past, this other person takes a spontaneous step to the side as if deliberately blocking your way. So you try the other side and the same thing happens. And then you get pissed, thinking it's personal, right? Then we get pissed. It's personal. They're cutting me off. They're deliberately doing it. Well, no. People just walk without thinking about where they're placing their feet or if they're keeping a perfectly straight line. So in this case, they are asleep. That means they're asleep. They're just, when you're operating on automatic, you're asleep. And so from time to time, the line of their steps spontaneously deviates to one side or the other. The motivation, the choice to move, originates in their subconscious mind, which is not at that moment being controlled by their conscious mind, which means it's open to a pendulum. So when we try to overtake the person, there's a little bit of a charge, and the pendulum's objective is to increase the charge. So it nudges the pedestrian to take an involuntary step to one side to block the way to create more charge, pissing you off, right? We don't know what the thought form is that constructed this pendulum, but we all know that in a city, people are stressed all the time and in a hurry and pay no attention to their thoughts, which are infiltrating everywhere. And thoughts of the same nature gather together then to create the pendulum or energy thought being. And when a pendulum starts swinging, common sense has no weight at all. Absolutely none. In certain communities, like in the army or a club or a sect, an environment is created, which is a pendulum itself, which supports only a certain type of thinking and behavioral stereotypes, which then create pendulums, and also lulls the adherents to sleep, which makes their subconscious susceptible to every single type of pendulum there is out there. So the best way to keep yourself from being taken over by a pendulum or thought energy being is to say routinely to yourself, in this moment, I am awake and I am aware of what I am doing, why I am doing it, and how I'm doing it. So pendulums only have power over us while we are falling asleep in waking life. So, and then our task is to unhook ourselves from the pendulums that have hooked us. And we do this simply by shifting our attention. For example, your neighbors, again, in the city are playing very loud music of a genre you don't like. And the more you focus on the music and how you don't like it, the pendulum created by the lyrics of the music and your neighbor's thoughts of fear or anger or stress have now snared you. So you've got two pendulums, if not more. So you don't suppress your emotion of frustration or whatever you're feeling. You just simply turn your attention to something else. And you, first of all, you recognize the emotion, accept it, and then you can let it flow out of you and turn your attention to something else. But we either try to suppress it or we just get obsessive compulsive about it. Mm-hmm. And I have fully experienced that many times. So let's talk about the charge or assigning meaning or the trigger to something. We all do it. We assign personal meanings to things because we live in the memories of wounds. Our weapons against ourselves are laziness, greed, apathy, and self-importance. Our upbringings instill self-importance, and we tend to be raised to be somebody because we know something or possess certain things, so false identities, and we're told we're better than or worse than someone else due to our material considerations. So as we define ourselves, we create these hard boundaries about that comprise ourselves and our world. And so we develop these highly conditional energy fields, pendulums that have us spending most of our energy in upholding our sense of self and the world. And that's why we tend to be so tired, because we don't realize how much energy we're spending on keeping this going. We split self-importance. We can split self-importance into two major components: self-enhancement and self-reflection. Self-enhancement consists of accenting yourself either positively or negative, thinking you're too good or not good enough, or that you know more or you know less, or you have more or have less, are all opposite sides of self-enhancement. So to rectify self-enhancement means that we neither place ourselves above others nor we turn our back on ourselves. It means that considerations of being worthy or unworthy don't enter the picture. It just means that we simply accept ourselves just as we are. Mm-hmm. And there's very few of us that do that. Mm-hmm. What also matters is not being either arrogant or too meek, because we think meekness is humility. No. True humility stems from discovering our true self, our core self, our natural self. That is pure, unconditional love, joy, peace, and joy, happiness. Discovering our core natural self leads to being, just being. And that's what we are, as human beings. And that is a state of balance and harmony with all of life around us. It consists of present centeredness, an innate sense of direction, not necessarily east, north, right, where you're going in life, and feelings of completeness or enoughness and joy. Throughout all this is power or divine will, the spirit that governs the consciousness that governs our steps. So in being, we don't measure the value of our abilities in relation to others, and we don't exalt ourselves in order to motivate ourselves. What we have is a quiet sense of self-assurance and the ability to maturely take ourselves less seriously. That's why all native tribes have a trickster like Coyote that makes us laugh at our stupidity. What Don Juan called it, our folly. Mm-hmm. It means that considerations of being, again, unworthy or just accept yourself as you are. Control your folly by accepting yourself as you are. So when we have the ability to maturely take ourselves less seriously, this balance rectifies feelings of insecurity. Insecurity or self-pity may cause us to lash out at the world or hold emotions too tightly inside. The flip side of self-importance is self-reflection, and this concept can be quite perplexing since it relates directly to having an identity in the worldview. An identity defined by society is not who you are. It is an aspect of how you fit into the society. And since a culture relies on a consensus of opinions about what reality is, it most often equates its worldview with reality, and that's not reality. Since a worldview is a principal means of interacting with the world, our world is therefore based on self-importance. So every time we tell ourselves that we are like this and the world is like that, we generate self-importance. And each and every time we define the world, we only reflect to ourselves about ourselves. And so we spend huge amounts of energy in upholding the pendulum, the view of the world, rather than finding out that the world is actually beyond our imagination. So when we are able to completely lose the sense of self-importance, we are the world. And once we can disengage from self-reflection, we no longer place conditions on reality and engage in a most intimate and complete dance with consciousness, spirit, Lealu mind. With no self-importance, then there's no need for retaliation. So this is what triggers pendulums, or what allows us to be triggered by pendulums. So let's talk about pendulums some more. Mm-hmm. Groups of people thinking in the same direction create information-based energy structures called pendulums. And then we people begin to act in the interests of the pendulum. Ever since we were kids, we've been taught to submit ourselves to someone else's will, performing our duties, serving our country, our families, the political party, the company we work in, the government, and even serving ideas like MAGA, like COVID-19, right? We've been taught to submit to everyone else's will as long as our own will had the lowest priority. So everybody has more or less a sense of obligation, responsibility, necessity, and guilt. Everybody in one way or another serves various groups and organizations like one's family, society. So yes, our families can create a pendulum. Is it a destructive pendulum or is it a positive pendulum? That helps you, right? So one's family, society, educational institutions, one's working place, one's political party, the government, and so on. All these pendulum structures are born and start to develop when a separate group of people start thinking and acting in the same way. Then new people join the organization or group and the structure grows, gaining strength, forcing its members to follow established rules until it reaches a point where the structure, the pendulum, is able to subjugate large social groups to its will. We saw that clearly with COVID-19, hugely clearly.
Mm-hmm.
On the level of material realization, energy structures, the pendulums, consist of people that are united by common goals and material objects such as buildings, constructions, furniture, equipment, technology, and so on. So a pendulum structure is created, or an energy thought being is created when the thoughts of a group of people are focused in one direction, and so the parameters of their thought energy becomes identical, and they merge into one flow. So in the middle of mind or consciousness then, which is like an energy ocean, the pendulum structure then starts living its own life. And the higher and faster it swings, the more people or adherents feed it with their energy. So every pendulum has their own characteristic frequency of vibrations. And if the number of a pendulum's adherents decrease, the pendulum swinging will slow down and eventually its swinging motion will be extinguished and it has no more control over anyone. So when there are no more adherents to swing, the pendulum will stop, and as an entity, it will die. So here are some examples of dead pendulums: stone tools, old-fashioned trends, vinyl records, although it's trying to come back. So in other words, a dead pendulum is everything that has existed before and is no longer in use. Which pendulums could also be called, from Rupert Sheldrake's words, morphic fields, shaping fields.
Mm-hmm.
So here are some examples of pendulums that exist in nature and wildlife: colonies of bacteria, populations of living creatures, schools of fish, herds of animals, woodlands, prairies, bee swarms, ant colonies, beehives, and so on. So any structure consisting of living organisms that are of a relatively homogeneous and well-ordered nature are forming pendulums. And some of the pendulums are destructive and others aren't. So, and since every living organism represents an energy unit, it can also be considered a pendulum. So we are our own pendulums. So when pendulums group together and start swinging in unison, they create a group pendulum. It stands, and that pendulum or morphic field then stands over the adherents like a separate and independent superstructure. And it will then make up rules for its adherents in order to keep them together and to attract new ones. The majority of pendulums that we're controlled by are destructive by nature because they take energy from their adherents and establish power over them. The pendulum or morphic field does not care about the fate of its individual adherents. It has only one goal: to maintain energy flow. So if a person is under the influence of a system or a pendulum, he has to live his life in accordance with the system's laws. Otherwise, the system will chew him up and spit him out. And I experienced that in the Army. I got chewed up and I got spit out. Not once, but twice.
Wow.
First from nurse anesthesia school and then from the entire Army, period. Yes, I got chewed up and spit out. So if a person is lucky, he or she will find her place in the system and continues to give energy to the pendulum, and is in turn provided in an environment in which to live, but not and survive, but not necessarily to thrive. As soon as the adherent starts breaking the rules, however, because his thought energy is no longer resonant with the pendulum, the person gets thrown out of the system or destroyed. It's amazing how often we get seduced by a pendulum's advertising tricks and wander away from the happiness that was right in front of us all the time. We join the army or the military and perish there, or we enroll in educational institutions and master professions that are not really what we want. We get jobs for prestige but feel alien to us, and we bring people into our lives and end up suffering with them. So a pendulum feeds on the energy of its adherents, and so therefore amplifies its swing. So here's some basic things about pendulums. They try to attract as many supporters as possible so that it can receive as much energy as possible. A pendulum sets its group of adherents against all other groups. We see that hugely going on in our world today, do we not? A pendulum puts on good-looking and attractive masks, covers itself up with noble aims, and plays on people's emotion to justify its actions and win over as many adherents as possible. And it's very aggressive in blaming all those who don't want to become its adherents, and it also is very aggressive in trying to win them over. So to demonstrate this, imagine a stadium where a dramatic soccer game is taking place and things are getting tense. The fans are raging, and suddenly one player of one team makes an unforgivable mistake and his team loses the game. A storm of anger descends from the fans on the player. We can't probably can't even begin to imagine the huge amount of energy that lands on this player. It's enough to make him die right there. So why?
Or they kill him. You know, that happened once.
Yeah, well, that's the pendulum.
Player, see, they killed him because he scored an auto goal.
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard about that, but that's what the pendulum does. You have no common sense when the pendulum takes you over. So why didn't he die? The pendulum. It might be the team pendulum. It might be the soccer stadium pendulum. It might be, who knows, but some pendulum harvested all that negative energy so it could swing. So the main defining feature of a destructive pendulum is that it aggressively seeks to destroy other pendulums so it can drag people over to its side. We see it at the Republican and Democrat Party. Right? So I used to go onto this site called Before It's News all the time. Are still leaning Republican. I don't lean either way now, but the latest it's saying there is Democrats are all dead. The Democrats are done. Right? It's like, oh my God, that's the pendulum, right? Mm-hmm. So to accomplish this, the pendulum will always try to set its adherents against adherents of other pendulums with, we are good, they're not like us, they are bad. And people who are drawn into this battle lose their way and start following false goals, which they mistakenly believe to be their own. The most extreme example of the battle for adherence is war. It does not matter what kind of slogans are used to justify wars and revolutions. Their purpose is always the same: to serve in the battle for adherence, to keep itself alive. After war come the battles for market domination, the rivalry of political parties, economic competition, all possible forms of marketing, advertising campaigns, ideological propaganda, and so on. A pendulum traps the frequency of its adherents. Could be illustrated like this. Let's say you're singing to yourself again. You have to be living in the city to have this happen. This doesn't happen to me. So you're singing to yourself, and all of a sudden, or you're in an apartment building, your neighbor starts playing a different song on high volume, and now it's difficult to continue singing your song. So the neighbor's pendulum will capture you if you get angry and start complaining about it. In order for you to give your energy to a pendulum, your thought energy must be of the same frequency as the pendulum's resonance frequency. It's not necessary for us to consciously direct our thoughts toward a pendulum. They get energy not only from, because they, most of us are so unconscious about what we're thinking anyway. So most of us are not hardly ever directing any energy toward a destructive pendulum consciously. It's all unconsciously. Mm. So pendulums get energy from their adherents, and they also get it from their most enthusiastic opponents. So imagine a group of people sitting on a park bench complaining and criticizing their government. They're not adherents of the government's pendulum, but because they are complaining and gossiping about it, they are producing thought energy at the frequency of the pendulum, and so they are giving it energy to swing. And that's how, the whole concept of 22 veteran suicides a day, that's a huge pendulum. And we all give it energy and actually then the pendulum actually causes the veteran to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. So one of the pendulum's most favorite methods of getting access to our energy is to get us off balance. Let's say we go shopping and we notice that prices have gone up. We don't like it, and we start complaining and talking about it with all our friends. And so we are radiating energy at the price increases pendulum's frequency. And so now it swings higher and prices will steadily increase. And we are controlled like a puppet. Feeling guilty is another efficient way for a pendulum to pump energy out of us. Feelings of guilt are forced on us already in our childhood. For everyone who's raised in a religion, absolutely, you're a sinner, you're no good, you're guilty. I grew up joking about the Seventh-day Adventist load of guilt versus the Catholic but they're all the same. It's all a pendulum. Mm. Guilt is a very convenient method of manipulation. If you're guilty, then they have to do what you tell them to do. So we redeem our fault by either accepting the punishment or working off our debt. Both are simply submission, obedience, and a specific way of thinking. The call of duty is another particular form of guilt. To have a duty means that one is obliged to do something. As a result, the guilty are walking around with their heads hanging, bringing the guilt pendulum their energy on a plate. Inducing feelings of guilt by suggestion is the most favorite weapon of manipulators. Mm. Here's another one, the inferiority complex. I'm not attractive. I don't have any abilities or talents. I'm not smart or clever. I don't talk right, and so on. That's a pendulum. Again, the guilt complex. I'm guilty of something. Everyone's judging me, and I have to bear my cross. Oh, that's another big one coming from religion. Mm. Bear your cross. Right? And the person that accepts the feeling of guilt is ready to submit fully to the pendulum. The warrior complex. I have to be cool, so I will declare war on myself and on everybody else. I will fight for my place under the sun, and I will take what is mine by force, or what I deem to be mine. Mm-hmm. And then there's a truth lover complex. I will show that I am right and everyone else is wrong. And there are many, many more complexes that we create pendulums with and get hooked by pendulums on. So most of us have a standard way of reacting to negative external sources of irritation called habits. The way of reacting is habit. Mm-hmm. Habits function as a switch that sets the pendulum's capture in motion, and habits are just simply illusions of comfort. Mm-hmm. So every one of us from time to time is confronted with negative information or undesirable events. This is just provocation by the pendulums. We don't want negative things in life, but we always react in one of two ways. If the information doesn't affect us much, we won't pay much attention to it, and we will forget about it soon enough so we don't get captured. But if the provocative information irritates or frightens us and there is something relevant to us in the information, then a capture of thought energy takes place and we get tuned to a pendulum's frequency. This is where Abraham Hicks says 17 seconds. You give one thought 17 seconds and you're going to be captured by a pendulum of the same frequency. Mm-hmm. So when we start feeling angry, outraged, worried, afraid, and we vigorously express dissatisfaction, we get caught. And now everything we want to avoid shows up in abundance. Imagine that. The stronger our desire is to avoid something, the greater the risk is that we will get what we are avoiding. Actively fighting what we don't want is the same as doing our best to make sure that this very thing is a part of our lives. So the only way to remove the unwanted from our lives is to free or liberate ourselves from the influence of the pendulum that has trapped us. And there are two ways to do this. One, making it fall through our emptiness, and number two, extinguishing it. And we're not going to go into that tonight because that's a whole nother subject.
Okay.
It's a whole nother night.
And is that for the next night?
Yeah. Next week.
Wow, because there's
that's important.
I was gonna ask some questions. You started answering them about how to avoid the pendulums, how to not fall into the pendulums, but there's no magic recipe for that. It's just
the main thing is to be conscious.
Yeah, knowing about them.
Yeah, know about the fact that there's pendulums that will capture you, and be aware of how long you're allowing yourself to think a negative thought, and being able to unhook from it.
Yeah,
because you've experienced that with me when I've looked at a video and then gotten on voice text with you and going, "Oh my God, what's the reality of this? Oh, really?" And then I realized I didn't know about pendulums at the time, but then I realized it's like I'm not gonna give that my thought, right? And once I learned about pendulums, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to give that pendulum my energy. So we have to ask ourselves, how many things on the news are actually pendulums that will get us to fulfill the elite's wishes, or how many things are them actually doing something?
Yeah. Well, so it leaves so much space, so much more time that we need to cover this and to go over this. And so what would you title the next week's conversation?
Liberating ourselves.
You told me about that you wanted to change, or I think you commented that you wanted to shift from using the word freedom to liberation. And maybe while freedom is intrinsic, liberation is an act that we need to consciously take a decision, and something we need to constantly be looking out. This pendulum stuff has been helpful. That the word pendulum, the idea, in my self-stalking, I'm walking around and I'm seeing how the mind is always going to, like, I don't know. This guy delivers my groceries, right? Because hey, today that's cheaper for me than going to the supermarket. Okay, so he comes out and he's like, so my mind is thinking, oh, is this guy going to be an asshole like the other one? And no, that's a negative thought. No, I don't want to think that way. And it swings the other way, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, oh, is this guy really nice? No, wait, maybe he's not really nice. Maybe he isn't. So you figure that you just have to keep, it's so easy to fall into those mental patterns of going to the extremes. Yeah. And the way, as it was taught by the Toltecs, is keeping the balance. So you just want to keep the balance all the time. You're stalking yourself all the time to keep the balance.
And and we don't have to worry about. We don't have to then because if we get all focused on, oh my God, am I keeping the balance or not? Then we create a pendulum, right? Oh my God, no, and we'll go into this more, maybe next week after talking about how to disengage from pendulums, how to make it fall through our emptiness and extinguish it. Maybe we'll go into this. What I discovered today with you, what I was telling you about through Ho'oponopono, and how the inner child, our subconscious, which is also our subjective mind that sits in our solar plexus and our gut, that's always where these things affect us. Our diaphragms are so shrunk up, we can't breathe. And that's why Hirochika Noguchi said he could tell the moment of your death from the state of your solar plexus. And then we have this mother who sits in our heart and we can't go into that without going into the principle of the three.
Yeah, leave it for next week because it's going to be too long.
Yeah, no, but we'll see if we go into that, the principle of the three. And then our Father, the logical mind, the objective mind, is up here in our brains. And all these places have neural networks that Jacobo Grinberg knows creates our reality. So the point is, like the example I gave you on voice text is this past weekend I wanted to spend time with my honey. And it didn't work out because we had butchered a pig together and he needed to go to Tulsa in the evening to get it up there because of the heat to his mom and dad's freezer. And so my father knew it was right. My mother said, you're enough. You don't need it. You don't need to spend the night with him. You're just fine without it. But the baby, the little subconscious wanted to throw a hissy fit. So we let ourselves, and then again, if we don't let ourselves feel that hissy fit of, oh my God, I didn't get what I want, that's the self-importance also. But if we allow it to feel it, ourselves to feel it, then it dissipates quickly. If we don't, then it gets stuck and it causes excessive potential, which gets triggered again and again and again.
Wow. So this is just too much to cover, too much to speak about, and such a powerful way to help ourselves. So you don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss this, folks. Next week, and please help us by commenting, by giving a like button, whatever you find on the platform, and make sure you're here for the next week, right? We'll see each other on the next session. So thank you for being here. And do you want to say anything else before we close?
Nope.
Okay, so we leave with all this excitement and hope to have the same excitement next week. So waterfalls of blessings for everyone.
So we might next week when we get